Hi, my name is Julia Kline, and welcome to today's broadcast. And this video, as the title says, is all about grief. And being the good marketer that I am, I know that this first moment of the video, I'm supposed to give you a hook to let you know what this video is going to be about so that you know whether to watch it or not. And what can I say? This video is about grief. And I figure if you clicked on it, you are dealing with grief. And there's a feeling of sadness that's welling up in you, and you don't know how to handle it. You don't know how to manage it. You don't know how to get past it. And you're hoping that I can offer you something to change that. So that's what this video is going to be. 15, 20 minutes, hopefully, in which I hope I will offer you something that's maybe sounds a little bit different than something you've heard before, or maybe this will be the first thing you've ever heard about how to deal with your grief, because it's something that's just happened. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So first, full transparency, I'm dealing with it myself today. Grief is a big theme in my life. It has been for 13 years, well, 15 years since my mom got sick, and 13 years since she died, and that sort of popped my cherry as far as grief goes. And since then, in the intervening 13, 15 years, I've had many, many experiences of loss that have created grief. And perhaps if I didn't already have that strong seed planted of grief from having lost my mother, maybe some of these other things wouldn't have registered as grief. But it's my belief that almost all of us have suffered grief. Now, I was talking with my best friend today who actually put her dog down yesterday. He was only 4 years old, and he had cancer, and it was way too young, and they had fought so hard to keep him alive, and she's just absolutely devastated. And she said to me through her sobs that she's never felt grief like this before in all of her 46 years on the planet. 45, sorry, 45. So maybe you haven't, but then again, if you're watching this video, I'm sure you have. But I wanted to just acknowledge that I've spent an hour and a half today doing the process that I'm about to share with you. So just in the interest of full transparency and being authentic and vulnerable with where I'm at. So the kind of grief that we're talking about is the grief when you've lost something, and the feelings that you're having are feelings of missing that person or that relationship, that animal, that object. In some cases, I lost my home a year ago, and I suffered a lot of grief around that. But it's the feeling of just missing. I'm wanting it back, knowing it's never coming back, but wanting it, as opposed to, being angry or wishing to control the outcome or any of those other perfectly valid feelings. But today we're talking about that feeling of missing, and I want it back so bad. I just want it back. And I've had a couple of insights about this today in my hour and a half of sobbing today. And one is that I think that life is an experience of successive losses. And again, my best friend told me today she's never felt something like this before, even though she had a grandma who died, she had a dog who died, but it's never been like this. But our whole life is experience of loss. We come into this earth, and as a baby, and kind of from that moment on, we're losing things. I mean, maybe that's a little bit of an overstatement, but in my case, I've lost my mother, I lost my family. I'm in the process of losing my father. He had a stroke 3 years ago, and he's dying. And he's certainly not the man that he used to be. I've lost my brother. I'm estranged from my brother at this point. I lost my fortune once. I lost my home a year ago. I've got a lot of experiences of loss. And today, I've got a very active grief process as well. I go through the experience of when grief is welling up in me, I deal with it. Now, mind you, not immediately, but That's one of the reasons why it's so important to deal with our grief, because I don't know about you, but for myself, I know that I think of grief as a trash can, and you can empty it out with a big cathartic process like what I did today. But at some point, the trash can gets filled again. It doesn't just go away. And when your trash can is getting full, if you don't empty it, I know what happens to me is I get cranky and I feel sad or depressed and unproductive. And I have sometimes gone 3 weeks of recognizing that I was feeling sad and cranky and unproductive, knowing that what was going on was the grief was coming up on me. But I didn't want to do the workaround. So I suffered for 3 weeks because it's like, oh, seriously? Grief again? I've done this. I've sobbed my eyes out so many times. I've gone through so many boxes of Kleenex. I don't want to do this again. This sucks. Grief sucks. Crying sucks. Feeling this way sucks. I want it to be over. I want it to be done. I want to be finished with this already. Okay. Temper tantrum over. Now let's do the grief work. Because if you don't, you're stuffing it. You're bottling it up. And then you're carrying it with you. And part of why this is up for me today is because I was at Sunday services this morning at my spiritual center, and the talk was from a man named Jim Dethmer, who's wonderful, by the way. He's written books and he speaks around everywhere, and we had the fortune of having him with us today. And it took him 20 minutes to do his talk, so I'm not going to go into his whole thing, but a piece of it was that when we experience drama, and in my case, in this moment, the drama that we're talking about is grief, what's really happening is that you're seeking a return to oneness. And certainly, that's how I'm currently interpreting it, that when I'm feeling, Mommy, I miss you, I want you back, or Daddy, I want you back, or my family, I wish that you still existed, or brother, I wish that we could still do Christmases together. And we didn't have this divide between us. What I'm wanting is oneness. I'm wanting the intimacy of feeling accepted and a feeling of belonging with my family, the people who are my flesh and blood, who've known me since the moment there was anything to know. And wanting that experience to be back. That's an experience of desiring oneness. And so his encouragement to his practice was, okay, so get in touch with that wanting. Get in touch with wanting, like, I want you back. I wish you weren't dead. Or with my friend with her dog yesterday, I want you back. Not any old, I want you, your personality, your cute little face, the special way you have of wagging your tail. You was too young for you to die. I want you back. I miss you. I want you back. And then, allowing yourself to feel that wanting and that longing. And then he said, also, then release that wanting if you can. Set it aside for the moment. And to me, that is, okay, I can let go of wanting you to come back, but that just leads me into acceptance that you're gone. And that's grief, right? That's the welling up, the sobs that make my stomach hurt, of grief. I miss you. I miss you. I want you back. I miss you. I can't believe I don't have this anymore. I want my family back. And I was recognizing this morning that this feeling of grief, when it's living in me, when I'm experiencing grief, that's certainly not the experience of oneness, which is obviously a very lofty spiritual goal, right? Grief is a feeling of lack, of something missing. Oneness is the opposite. Feeling oneness, wholeness, perfection, all is as it should be. And they're mutually exclusive. But then I kind of had the aha that, well, as a person walking a spiritual path, if oneness is my goal, well, we all know that we don't walk in oneness every moment of the day. You know, when we yell at the person who just cut us off in traffic, or we raise our eyebrow with disdain at the person who's smoking and we have to smell their smoke, or, you know, we sit in judgment of whatever it is that we do, right? Those are all moments of not being in oneness. Well, okay, so let me let myself off the hook for inviting an experience that is, I know isn't oneness because it's grief. Let me invite that experience and experience it fully. And just embrace fully the lack that I feel because of the gaping hole in my life that exists because my mother isn't there, or because my brother isn't there, because my family doesn't exist anymore. It's a gaping hole. And so let me experience that. Let me fully feel that feeling of lack and sadness and missing and longing and wanting it back. And then, for as long as it takes, I sobbed for an hour and a half this morning, and clearly it's not done, because here it is coming up for all of you to hopefully learn something from, take something from. But then it gets to be over. Then I get to smile and laugh and be in a place of oneness such that I can, you know, go out and have the rest of my life experiences. Not forever, mind you, because tomorrow or next week or 3 months from now or whenever it happens, my grief trash can will be completely full again. It will be time once again to go through the same process. But the trade-off is, or the I don't know, the experience is that letting myself do the catharsis, plunge deeply into the grief, allows me to have a week or a month or 3 months of not grief. Whereas, as I said before, when your grief trash can is filled up and you don't acknowledge it, you don't give yourself that moment or that hour, that day of just sobbing into it, well, now you're just walking around the world lugging around a full grief trash can. And that will make you cranky and sad and depressed and unproductive. So, and then the last piece of wisdom or insight, I should say, it's wisdom for me, I don't know, hopefully it will help you. The last piece of insight that I got today is that while, yes, it is annoying that grief just keeps coming back and coming back and coming back. Yes, it is annoying. Like, oh my God, really? Again? I just did this. I don't want to have to do this again. Yes, it's annoying. And it is not the same grief over and over and over again. At least it's not for me. And again, because I have grief about my mother who died 13 years ago. And that's 13-year-old grief. I have grief about my brother from whom I'm estranged and who doesn't want me to do holidays with him. And that grief is kind of ongoing, you know, maybe a few years old because the estrangement has been in place for a while. But and now there's grief about my father and his slow decline into someday not too long in the future not being with us anymore. And at some point, because this is the nature of life, my cat is going to die, or my best friend, God forbid, is going to get sick, or I'm going to lose a part of myself. You know, I've known people who have, you know, lost their ability to sing. Those may be very important to them, or lost their eyesight, or lost, you know, a part of their sexuality, or, you know, life is a series of losses, and all of them need to be grieved. So while, yes, it's annoying to have to come back and back and back and back to grief, it's helpful for me today to realize, well, yeah, and I'm grieving different stuff or new stuff, you know, such that silver lining is. So the last thing I want to leave you with, just kind of, you know, by way of summary or giving you a few steps, is the first step with grief is to give yourself permission to have it, to recognize, you know, that when things are lost, it's sad. And you need to grieve it. You need to cry. And the second thing is that when you do it fully, you know, make noise, give yourself as long, you know, don't try to make it be 1 minute and then done. You know, today it was an hour and a half. I have sometimes done crying jags for the better part of 3 days, if that's what it takes, you know, to fully just squeeze all of the grief out of your body that's there today. And then the final thing is to recognize that when it's done for a little while. So once it's done, now you can step back into fully experiencing the rest of your life and experiencing joy and attracting abundance and reaching for oneness until at some point the grief trash can is full again and you have to do it again. So thank you for watching today's video. Please leave a comment down below if this was helpful for you, if you have any questions, if you'd like to follow up with this. And please subscribe to my channel if you enjoy getting these bits of wisdom on a Sunday. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.